Good morning, baby. It's the Doug Rising Show. Well, the Doug Rising Show. Well, the Doug Rising Show. And I'm Doug Rice. Da-da-da-da-da-da-da. I don't hear enough damn horns. Do it again. I'm just joking. Good morning. How are you? Doug Rice. I am in your face. That's right. Early morning Monday. How you doing? It's after Sunday. Did you see yesterday's offering? Did you tune in? Did you take a look at me? I don't know. You couldn't see me because I don't do the camera anymore. But I had a good time yesterday. We went over 7 topics. We went over Negro news. I told you to get that goddamned grin off your face, and then I left. But today I offer Negroes something of a different flavor. Something for the Negro Nation to truly savor. And I will tell you this, folks, all jokes aside, the Delectable Negro is a hell of a ride. Now look, I did not include the entire title of the book, and there is a reason, and I would like you to take a look. Here we go, the Delectable Negro. We're going to get right into the show. Human consumption and homoeroticism within U.S. slave culture by Vincent Woodward. Now, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, I need you to focus today because there's a lot that we're going to say today. Now, look, here's the deal. We're going to keep it real. We're going to talk about what they really fear and how they initiated the destruction on Negro maleness in slave culture. And I'll tell you something, the Delectable Negro is a hell of a read. And really, you have no idea the places it will lead. They're at war with Negro men. Let me say that again. Now, I know all attention is on our Negro women these days. They're taking the lead in so many ways. They're prosecuting caucasity. They are taking male whiteness to task. We're going to see just how long this lasts. But what's really held close to the vest is the fear that puts the fear in them best. And that's Negro masculinity. And I mean that. They've done everything they can to destroy the Negro man. And they did it right in front of our women. Now we've got clowns walking around like Billy Zane, and I guess that's his name. A Negro dressing in dresses done gone insane. And we got a little Nas, N-A-S, nasty. That is not a jest. That is exactly the kind of test he passed. He became as nasty as his ass could possibly be. And I mean that. All you got to do is look and see. And these are the celebrities that they put in our faces. This is the example of Negro maleness that they'll accept en masse. And I'm not trying to attack the conduct as much as the construct and its echoing and intense application and its destruction to the family, values, and unit within the Negro nation. The Delectable Negro, human consumption, and homoeroticism within the slave culture. Yeah, touchy subject, men, but we need to go over this. We need to figure out exactly how and when this went left. We're going to find that out. So Vincent Woodward gives, I would say, an insightful look into it. We're going to take a look at the chapters as we normally do. I was able to edit this PowerPoint presentation, because you can do that when you create a PPP. So one of the words that I thought might give me some trouble there in chapter 6, I was able to edit, and you can see that. All right, so this is an interesting book. This is insight. First, let's take a look. Homosexuality and homosexual relationships are not native to the Negro nation. Let me say that one more time so that you don't forget your station. Now, I don't give a damn what these Greco-Roman European men do to one another. I'm only concerned with my Negro brother, and I will say it yet again so you understand that homosexuality, lesbianism, all of these somehow mental schisms were not a part of the Negro nation. And within it, none of it has a place in. But how did we get here? How did the acceptance of a lifestyle foreign to captives brought here against our will, corralled here, if you will, how did it happen? How did this go about? Because again, I mean, we have no association with homosexuality, and of that I have no doubt. So what's happening? Well, let's find out. So the introduction, master eated me when I was meat. Very interesting. Cannibalism in Transatlantic context, cannibalism in transatlantic context, sex, honor, and human consumption. Chapter 3, A Tale of Hunger Retold, Ravishment and Hunger in Frederick Douglass's Life and Writing. 4, Domestic Rituals of Consumption. 5, Eating Nat Turner. That is an interesting story. And 6, The Hungry N-Word. I was able to edit that. So we got 6 chapters over 200 some odd pages of writing with notes and bibliography and indexes and about the author and about the editors and all of this. And the fact of the matter is, I've looked at this publication a lot before reading it, and I can't believe I did not miss the inherent topic so touchy by so many Negroes. It's going to be a path to get out of this place. It's going to require that you remove all laughs to get out of this place. And it's a full frontal assault on your senses before we can leave all this nonsense behind us, because we can't take this shit with us. Can't take this mental baggage with us. We can't take any of it with us. And so we have to examine it, and then we have to excise it from our existence. We have to recognize the disease within our own Negro society, and we have to correct ourselves before even venturing outside the confines of this place. There's too many fleas to shake off. The dog's asses that wander about within the Negro nation. And I mean that. We're going to have to get honest with ourselves. We're going to have to talk about these subjects that are subjects not commonly talked about and confront them. And ideally, Negro men, the masculinity of men that existed God knows when, but, it was 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, we started getting a bit of a grip on that masculinity that was a little too goddamned much for these oppressors. And so they put their touch in things and started touching things. Now we're going to see the kind of future that brings. All right, so here we go. Hope you're enjoying the show. If you are, please do me a favor. Like, subscribe, comment, hit the notification button. Trina and Antoine Anderson, moderators extraordinaire, should both be in there. If this is too sensitive for you, if this hits you, if there's a problem, get the hell out. We're trying to solve them. All right, so let's see where this takes the show. Here we go. Now, these are editor's notes by Justin Joyce. I don't need to read that. That's my choice. This is a foreword by E. Patrick Johnson. I think I'll move that forward. And the introduction, I will tell you, it's a bit long, and so I'd rather just start on chapter 1 and move on. Look how long the introduction is. I'm already at 16. You now know exactly what I mean. 22, 24, 25. I don't go through this beforehand. Here we go. Chapter 1. I'm going to give this a little bit of magnification until we're done. All right. So again, folks, thank you for showing up. Thanks for tuning in. We are going to look at this subject as carefully and as closely as we can. I want you to pay attention to what they've done to us as men, Black Negro males in this country, and when it started and how. Here we go, chapter 1. Cannibalism in the transatlantic context. In the 18th and 19th centuries, Europeans did not understand the extent to which Western and Central Africans regarded them as cannibals and flesh harvesters. In an 1849 exchange between Augustino, an African-born slave, and the Select Committee of the House of Lords, appointed to consider the best means which Great Britain can adopt for the final extinction of the African slave trade, British interrogators questioned the African man regarding his belief in European cannibalism. What? British interrogators could not understand what had put the idea into the slave's head that they were to be eaten. Are they eaten in their own country? Asks the British interrogator, as ignorant and suspicious of Africa as the new slaves were of the white world. In an expected rhetorical maneuver, the interrogator places the onus of proof and explanation on the African man, Augustino. The British man is willing to believe that African culture practices lend themselves to cannibalism, whereas he presumes that civilized European legislative processes, mechanisms of reason, and critical inquiry rise above such a cannibal accusation. Had Augustino truly received the opportunity and felt compelled to explain the particular constellation of beliefs, social practices, human science, and perceptions informing the Africans' belief in white cannibals, members of the Select Committee would have learned more that day than they probably wanted to know about African notions of Christian cannibalism, slavery as a process of human consumption, and sex and the consumptive appetites of whites from an African perspective. Now, here's what I mean. I need you to understand this, because this is real, okay? This is happening today. This is happening today. These supposed Christian monsters take our children and literally consume them sexually as a process of human consumption. I'm not saying this just off the cuff. I'm not throwing just blind accusations. I'm going to tell you something. Miss Barrett, our new Chief Justice, that woman, that white woman, has adopted 2 black children. She is a Catholic. Look it up. And there's been more than a hint and a sniff of the kinds of rituals, and I do mean the sexualized rituals, that they have been performing with these 2 children that this white woman, now a Supreme Court justice, has in her clutches. You heard me, and I said it. And let me tell you something, folks. I read it. They didn't just slide into the positions that they have in these lofty places. They've got more going for them than just their white faces. They do shit. Let's get back to it. The British interrogator asks the African man to speak, to just testify before this legislative body, but then renders his voice in perpetual reality. What he might have said about white cannibalism, unspeakable. Rather than inquiring into exactly what Africans meant by eating and flesh consumptions, Europeans and white Americans habitually applied to African persons and cultural practices generic theories of social ineptitude and cannibalistic hunger. For example, in 1839, an American media proliferated with images of the Mende persons who had taken over the slave ship Amistad, A number of the Mende men had pointy-filed teeth and emerged from the slave ship onto American shores wearing no clothing. According to Patricia A. Turner, white Americans equated the African men's pointed teeth and their nakedness with cannibalism. This was an appalling and disturbing lack of modesty as far as white Americans were concerned. In their minds, it made sense that people who were ambivalent about clothing would be the kind to eat human flesh. Oh, really? The Mende, though, had their own ideas about Europeans as cannibals. It was the fear of cannibalistic Europeans that inspired the Mende men to revolt, seize the slave ship, and attempt to sail the vessel back to Sierra Leone. And if you remember, folks, they did a show, they did a movie about it, Amistad, we want free, all that good stuff. That was an interesting movie, very good. Firmly wedded to the rigid notions of their own civility, Europeans have, for the most part, presumed themselves beyond accusations of cannibalism. As we see with the British interrogator, the belief in European supremacy determines the direction and outcome of the exchange from the outset. The British interrogator interprets any insight Augustino would bring to the topic of Europeans as cannibals as evidence of African cannibalistic. Wait, what? So here's what he did. The accusation that Europeans were cannibals when it came to African possession was then flipped and the lie told on Africans. This is the insidious nature of these beings. Let's read on to see what else we're seeing. In the context of hearings focused on the African person, on an ending the slave trade, the last thing British magistrates wanted to discuss was the topic of an emerging European cannibal. Really? They wanted to end the slave trade, absolve their nation of moral taint, and return the Africans to their original status of savagery, unless the civilian efforts of missionaries and other such persons sent to reform the continent of Africa intervened. So let me understand this. So you wanted to end slavery. They wanted to remove any culpability they had in its existence and any blight it might put on their holy white name. And then the final coup de grace into their interruption into any civilization, they're sucking on the teat of people to accomplish their ends. They would simply cast these individuals back into what they consider the wilderness and leave them as the savages they were before they took them into slavery to put them to work for free. Fuck these motherfuckers. You hear me? You wonder why I tell Negroes to get that goddamned grin off their faces. Don't you understand these same beings are in high and lofty places? Their offspring is still here. Their kin is still near. Their progeny is whispering in our goddamned ear. Okay, I drift. That's just what I do. Let's move on and try to learn something. Okay. Sorry. Taking my cue from this exchange between the British official and Augustino, I explore in this chapter the correlation between the consumptive appetites of whites and the transatlantic slave trade. It is my contention that somewhere between European denial and African accusation, a new species of civilized white cannibal was born. This white cannibal was unique to the Middle Passage and transatlantic slavery. In addition to literal acts of eating, carving, and cooking flesh, European and American whites developed a culture of cannibalism where in daily acts of violence, religious conversion, slave seasoning and breaking, and sexual brutality all fed into the master's appetite for African flesh and soul. Now you know where this is going. They considered the abuse beset upon Negroes taken into captivity by these white demons to include sexual abuse, buck breaking, if you will. These individuals, these beings, they have so much to pay for. You think there's not a reckoning coming their way? I mean, there is. That's all I really got to say. All right, let's move on. Many historical texts on the subject of slavery describe the importance of the process of seasoning for breaking men and women and making them into docile slaves. Elaborating on the culinary connotations of the word seasoning, season, to heighten or improve the flavor of food by adding condiments, spices, herbs, or the like. I link the physically brutal culture of seasoning to the parallel development of erotic appetites, tastes, and aesthetic longings for the black male. Let me tell you something, folks. These abhorrently vile creatures who set their hands on Negro royalty sought to satiate their sexually depraved appetites upon Negro men especially through the passage. And there is much these creatures will pay for, and pay for dearly. That's mine. I'm gonna own that one. That's all me. I couldn't help it. Let's move on. This broader understanding of seasoning is important, as it helps explain how institutional processes such as Christian indoctrination, male fraternal love and bonding, and the acquisition of literacy facilitated the social consumption of the Negro and the creation of a high cultural premium upon African flesh. It's almost like they were trying to absorb something, almost as if they were trying to connect themselves to the unconnectable. It's interesting that these creatures who look at you and smile are so goddamned inherently vile. Some of you need to look at the folks that follow Donald Trump. Some of you need to look carefully. You need to understand that these beings are the same goddamned beings that we've seen before, that got us to this racist fucking shore. I need you to understand that. Okay. The textual focus of this chapter is Aluwadal Iquianos, the interesting narrative of the life of that guy, or Gustavus Vasa, the African, written by himself. Dang, dude, just say by me. Give it a title, no? It was the first to document extensively the experiences and travels of an African Igbo child sold into slavery. Do I need to stop right there? Let me read that again. This book, this guy, his name, Olaudah. We know the name within the name. We recognize that holy fame. But the child, the documented experience of an African, what? Does that say Igbo down there? Can somebody help me out? Is that Igbo, or do I have to jump in this screen? Igbo, Hebrew, Negro child, sold into slavery and shuttled among English, U.S., and Caribbean slave owners. What is still little acknowledged among the scholars of Equiano's narrative is how his text documents at length the process of the slave's social consumption, focusing on culinary rituals, processes of flesh seasoning, and the hunger and appetites whites developed for blacks in the context of slave culture. Equiano's text is a useful touchstone for beginning this book-length discussion of homoeroticism and human consumption, as it brings together this culture of consumption with male fraternity and homoeroticism. Equiano's social consumption always happens in the context of intimate homoerotic relations, a fact suggesting that intimacy and connection rather than objection and disconnection might have best facilitated the slave's social consumption. Now let me stop there for a moment to tell you something. We got folks like George Bush. We got folks, George Bush, George H.W. Bush, his father, George Herbert Walker Bush, the other guy, the son. I mean, we got John Kerry. We got all these goddamn folks. Let me tell you something, folks. Let me tell you something about these creatures. This homoeroticism, this male bonding that they're talking about in their kind of disgusting way, it plays all the way up into the heights of power. You check my math, and you let me know if you find this something as a fact. So we got Tim Russert, talking on his Sunday show. And there he is questioning Mr. Bush about his college days, And what we're talking about is secret societies. And of course, we know Mr. Russert died shortly thereafter. And when he asked Mr. Bush about his secret societies, he did give out a little laughter because he knew that Mr. Russert was through as he looked at him. And he knew it too. But let me tell you about the rituals that these clowns perform, these skull and bones idiots, and it's not the norm. They get into a casket, and for as much as it lasts, these idiots satiate and masturbate, and that's what they do. And you can check my math, because I told you to. So these rituals set upon Negroes in this country, these homoerotic rituals, the male consumption of Negroes, is something practiced by these abhorrently vile creatures today amongst themselves. So don't think that they've tossed the practice on a goddamn shell. We're going to move to chapter 2. Because if I don't know what I'm gonna do. So understand how we're kind of getting through this. This is a book that should be read. It's a book that should be read that brothers and sisters and there's a connectivity. Again, I'll tell you without any. Listen, folks, they did it in front of our women. The buck breaking happened in front of our women. The raping of our women happened in front of our men. You understand? And it's all some psychological game that never was able to mend. And the hangings and the castrations and the burnings alive. It's a wonder we Negroes could even survive. But this is the root cause of the issue. This human consumption. All right, let's go to chapter 2. Thanks again for showing up. Like, subscribe, and if you are so inclined, support this effort. For goodness sake, folks, we have to get this information out before we can leave. We have to be able to predatorily receive this information seriously to get to release the Negro Nation. We got to be awoke. Just ain't no joke. Okay, let's move on. Chapter 2. Yeah, I was looking for chapter 2. Sex, Honor, and Human Consumption. We're talking about The Delectable Negro. It's a publication available from, online. I'm not going to provide or claim to give this away. I'm pretty sure, if you ask for it, I'll do it anyway. But I'm not going to promote this as one of the PDFs that I provide because this is a book in publication and not mine. But I will recommend that you get this, and I'm pretty sure, I will take no donation for this one. I will simply, if you request it, I'll simply send it to you. But I encourage you to purchase it or get it in another manner. I want to be real cautious about that. I know Detrine is typing something to help me out. All right, chapter 2. Let's move on. The Delectable Negro. Sex, Honor, and Human Consumption. Lilburn Lewis, a Kentucky slave owner, owned a considerable number of slaves whom he drove, constantly fed sparingly, and lashed severely. According to the abolitionist Lydia Marie Child, Lewis was a typical plantation owner whom most in the local community probably respected and looked to as a model wealthy citizen in terms of his treatment slaves. Wow. In 1826, he would commit crimes against his slaves that would cause his community to ostracize him and pursue legal restraint. What did he do? He committed suicide while awaiting criminal trial. Well, we know what he did. We know. It's hard to say from the evidence if George, a young recalcitrant slave on Lewis's plantation, was a favorite, or if Lewis consciously chose him, as many masters did, as the object of ritualized violence and as an emblem of his manhood and noble social stature. All we know for sure is that George, like many on the plantation, often went hungry, suffered the lash too often, and grew to despise and resist his condition of bondage. George provoked his master's penchant for punishment by frequently running away in addition to disobeying. Sent to the spring one day to collect water into an elegant pitcher, George made the hard mistake of letting the pitcher fall and standing by it and watching as it dashed to shivers on the rocks. As punishment for George's transgression, his master bound him to a wooden plank and in the manner of a butcher quartered him with an axe and cooked his severed body parts and pieces of flesh over a billowing fire. Ha! Ha! You like that? Huh? You like that? Huh? Which of you is grinning? Which of you has a goddamned smile on your face right now? Now, you need to hear me on this. This was 1826. This, what do you think? What do you think? You think this wasn't common practice? Do you think the genetic material of beings such as these somehow dissipated into nothingness to appease the gods of some ungodly group of beings? I mean, do you actually understand what we're reading? This happened. Now, they accused us of cannibalism, but I want you to picture every time these days one of them gets the opportunity to express their ways. One of them choked out a brother on the subway. Remember that? Remember that? Another guy, I believe, was it a fast food? No, it was in one of these stores. Yeah, it was in a thrift store. Guy came in, tried to rob the guy. The guy choked out the young brother and killed it. This was recently. Check my math. So the predilection for torture and human violation seems to be one associated with their nation, not us. Next, let's back at it. Here we go. Well, that's interesting, right? So, wonder what they did to him. Let's find out. Okay. Wow, that's weird. That's way out. Wow. In preparation for this ritualized punishment, Lewis gathered all of the slaves on the plantation into the most roomy Negro house. Oh, isn't that nice? Bolted the door and told those assembled that the design of this meeting was to teach them to remain at home and obey orders. The ritual begins with George's younger brother helping the master bind the slave to a wooden bench. George was called up, and by the assistance of his younger brother laid on a broad bench or block. The master then cut off his ankles, spelled incorrectly, with a broad axe. In vain, the unhappy victim screamed. How dare he? Not a hand among so many dared to intervene. Having cast the feet into the fire, he, the master, lectured the Negroes, and notice he calls them Negroes, at some length. He then proceeded to cut off his limbs below the knees. The sufferer besought him to begin with his head, and of course it was in vain. The master went on thus until trunk, arms, and head were all in the fire, still protracting the intervals with lectures and threatenings of like punishment in case any of them were disobedient or ran away or disclosed the tragedy they were compelled to witness. In order to consume the bones, the fire was briskly stirred until midnight. Now, let me ask you something. What kind of goddamned creature does that to a person? And don't you know that these same vile creations are still amongst us today? And they are held within themselves through threat of punishment, ostracization, who knows? But can you imagine of the 100,000 or so Negro women that go missing, how many of them may be swimming and being the same kind of treatment by these beings? You think you don't know what we're seeing? What do you think they're doing with our Negro women? What do you think they're doing with our Negro children? What do you think they're doing? God Almighty arrives in this place, let me tell you, all the evidence is going to be put in front of our face. And we're going to see then. But I can tell you now, I read this. In some way, somehow, I know God won't miss. He'll be here. Somebody did this shit, you know? A white man did this to a brother because he ran the fuck away. Because he did what any other natural human being would do to this very goddamned day. And I can't abide a smile on a Negro's face in open space. I swear to God, what a goddamn disgrace. You consider what they've done. The energy of that is still here. Do you understand that? That Negro's screams are still confined within the space of this place. His actions are still here. Let's get back to it. I drift. Sometime in the early morning, an earthquake materialized. Sometime in the early morning, an earthquake materialized and shook the slave shack, crumbling the walls and extinguishing the fire. This act brought an abrupt halt to the master's activities. The Negroes were allowed to disperse with charges to keep it secret under the penalty of like punishment. Later that evening, Lewis's wife inquires into her husband's activities. When his wife asked the cause of the dreadful scream she had heard, he said that he had never enjoyed himself so well at a ball as he had enjoyed himself that evening. The Delectable Negro. That's the book we're reading. They're recounting an historical event regarding a runaway slave. The master decided to draw and quarter him literally and then put him on a fire. And then fast forward about 200 years, and these creatures have the nerve to present themselves as something to fucking admire. I wish I would catch one of you skinning and grinning. Now, let me tell you something, man. The Holocaust. They don't want you to forget that goddamned Holocaust, do they? I mean, the actions, huh? 6 million motherfuckers. Dear God, how vile. But I need to understand and I need to know. And any of these Germans, any of these Nazi motherfuckers ever just decide to draw and quarter a motherfucker and throw them on the fire for the fuck of it? And I just need to know. Look, I'm gonna have to stop there. Because if I don't, I'm never gonna stop. So I'm gonna pick this up tomorrow. We're gonna go through this book. This happened, folks. You understand? This happened. This is the critical race theory they don't want taught in schools. Can you imagine reading this book in a school in Florida? Ron DeSantis would lose his goddamn mind. All right. I'm going to go. I appreciate you tuning into the Doug Rice Show. We're going to cover this book at length. I have to be in the right frame mentally to keep up with this strength. Trust me. And I don't like to read angry. I got to go into the day in a good mood. But we are going to pick this up tomorrow and see what kind of mood it exudes. You know what I'm saying? Plus, you know, dear God, read this book, The Delectable Negro. Take a look. We're going to cover it. We're going to pick up from right here. We're going to figure this out. I think I might go through all of this. Who knows? Who knows? I don't know. Maybe just the highlights. I don't know. All right. Thanks for tuning in to Doug Rice Show 746 in the morning. Hey, they tell me that 20 minutes, all of you start leaving anyway. So what do I, did your 40 minutes. All right. All right. Thanks so much for tuning in. Hey, pay attention to our sponsor, twidwear.com. Use the promo code TDRS, get 10% off all products. I'm gonna let you hang right there, and I'm gonna bow out gracefully. I got stuff to do. You guys are awesome. Again, use the scrolling links below to show your support of the Doug Rice Show. And I gotta go, just so you know. Have a good day, and I'm gonna get out the way. All right, bye bye, y'all. What? Hold on, I know, I forgot. Wait, I'm leaving, So, today, Monday, of all days and of all topics and of all the kinds of ways I can send you on your way. As some of you head out today, I want you to please remember the faces that you look at and understand that not all of them are deserving of your Negro smile. I mean that, man. And listen, folks, I don't give a damn about what they're saying. I don't care about them talking about this as the past and its history and I never owned slaves. Shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear it. The only way to stave off and really get from within them the truth of their sentiment is to walk around without a smile on your face. I mean that. You give it a shot just today. Give it a shot today, folks. Try it out. If you gotta be amongst white faces, do me a favor, get that goddamn grin off your faces. Not today. Not to motherfucking day.